Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. My wife and I had just welcomed our second child in early 2023 and moved into a duplex in what seemed like a perfect neighborhood, complete with its own playground. After moving in, we met our neighbors, mostly young professionals who appeared decent enough. The very next day, we discovered our upstairs neighbors had disappeared, leaving their 8-year-old daughter Sarah outside our door with nothing but a pack of Doritos and a hastily written note asking us to babysit while they ran some errands, on a school day no less. That was our first call to Child Protective Services. "Can you believe this?" I asked my wife as we took care of Sarah. "Who leaves their kid with complete strangers?" Our other neighbors were fantastic. Mike, the elderly gentleman next door, restored vintage motorcycles and would often chat with us over the fence. "Watch out for those folks upstairs," he warned us one afternoon. "Nothing but trouble since day one." Tom, our other neighbor who did carpentry, regularly visited with his grandkids. "Those people up there," he said, shaking his head, "they've got people coming and going at all hours. It's not right." They weren't kidding. The constant parade of sketchy visitors and nightly parties made sleep impossible. It escalated to numerous confrontations, with shouting matches becoming a regular occurrence. "Keep it down up there!" I'd yell at 3 a.m. "Mind your own business," they'd scream back. The landlord was utterly useless. "There's nothing I can do without proof," he'd say every time we complained. Then came my opportunity. One night in January 2024, they pulled up in their red Hyundai Elantra, which was absolutely wrecked, clearly from a hit and run. I immediately called the police. "Officer, I think you might want to check this out," I said, describing the damage. What happened next was beyond my expectations. Turns out Jake, the guy upstairs, had an outstanding warrant for drug trafficking. That night, I watched from my window as they led him away in handcuffs. Meanwhile, his girlfriends Lisa and Rachel got another CPS visit because once again they'd left Sarah home alone, something that happened practically every day. My wife did some digging and found Rachel's Facebook profile. Through public records, we discovered they owed Aaron's rental nearly $52,000 for furniture they'd stolen from their previous address, including high-end TVs and an expensive sound system that had been making our lives miserable. 2 days later, the sheriff arrived with a moving truck. "Time to collect," he announced as his team cleared out everything. Beds, sofas, TVs, that awful subwoofer system, kitchen set, and all their dressers. CPS came shortly after to remove Sarah. It was heartbreaking to watch, but necessary. The poor kid was always hungry and wearing the same tattered clothes. We'd been secretly feeding her whenever possible. I couldn't bear seeing a child go hungry. Jake ended up back in jail for drug possession. They found his stash in one of the repossessed dressers. Lisa got arrested for assaulting the sheriff during the furniture removal. But Rachel's story had a positive twist. After losing custody of Sarah, she committed to several rehabilitation programs and turned her life around to regain custody. I ran into her at the grocery store last month. "Thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "That wake-up call saved my life. Sarah and I are doing great now." The next one is an entitled people's story. My family has owned our vineyard in Northern California since 1962. When my grandfather bought the 40-acre property after immigrating from Italy, I practically grew up among those grapevines, helping my dad tend to them every summer since I was old enough to walk. The vineyard isn't just land to us, it's our heritage, our livelihood, and our home. So when some power-hungry homeowner association tried to claim jurisdiction over our property and foreclose on it, you better believe I wasn't going down without a fight. The trouble started in early 2022 when a letter arrived from Pine Creek Estates Homeowners Association. I almost threw it away thinking it was junk mail since we'd never been part of any homeowner association. But something made me open it. Notice of delinquent assessments and intent to lien amount due, $24,750. I actually laughed out loud when I read it. The letter claimed we owed back homeowner association dues for the past 5 years, plus late fees and administrative charges. There was also some nonsense about violations of community standards regarding agricultural use of residential property. I called my dad right away. "Hey Dad, you're not going to believe this ridiculous letter I just got." After I read it to him, he was equally baffled. "What homeowner association? We've never been part of any homeowners association. Pine Creek Estates? That's that new development they built on the old Johnson property about 6 years ago. They're on the other side of the county road." "That's what I thought. I'll just ignore it then?" "No," Dad said firmly. "Call them and get this straightened out right away. These homeowner association people can be real trouble if you let them get away with anything." I called the number on the letter and reached someone named Karen Matthews, who identified herself as the Homeowner Association Board President. The conversation did not go well. Mrs. Matthews, there must be some mistake. Our vineyard isn't part of Pine Creek Estates or any homeowner association. Oh, there's no mistake, she said in a condescending tone. Your property falls within our jurisdiction according to the original development plans. We've been very patient about your unauthorized agricultural activities, but the board has decided it's time to bring all properties into compliance. Ma'am, we've owned this land for 60 years. We were here long before Pine Creek Estates existed. You can't just arbitrarily claim authority over our property. I assure you we can, and we have. The assessment notice explains your options for payment. I suggest you review it carefully. The board is prepared to move forward with foreclosure if necessary. I was stunned by her arrogance. Are you seriously threatening to try to take our property over fake homeowner association fees? There's nothing fake about it. Payment is due within 30 days or we'll proceed with placing a lien. Have a nice day. She hung up before I could respond. I immediately called my cousin Angela, who's a real estate attorney. After I explained the situation, she was livid. This is complete BS, she said. They can't retroactively claim your property as part of their homeowner association. Do you have the original deed and property records? Yeah, Dad keeps everything in his filing cabinet. I'll dig them out. Good. Send me copies of all of it, plus that letter. I'm going to look into exactly what Pine Creek Estate's actual boundaries are. Something sketchy is going on here. Over the next few days, Angela discovered that Pine Creek Estates was built in 2016 on 100 acres that used to belong to our old neighbor Earl Johnson. The development consisted of about 80 cookie-cutter homes on quarter-acre lots. The homeowner association was incorporated when the development was built. Here's the really interesting part, Angela told me. Their CC&Rs clearly show the homeowner association's jurisdiction is limited to the original 100-acre Johnson property. They have absolutely no legal right to claim authority over your land. But get this. I found records showing they've pulled this same stunt with 3 other properties bordering their development in the past 2 years. Seriously? What happened with those cases? 2 of them paid up rather than fight it. The 3rd owner moved away and the homeowner association foreclosed on the property. They then sold it to a developer who's friendly with several board members. My blood was boiling. So they're basically trying to steal land through fraudulent homeowner association claims? That's gotta be illegal. Oh, it definitely is, but they're counting on people not having the resources or knowledge to fight back. They picked the wrong family this time, though. Angela helped me draft a strongly worded legal response to the homeowner association, citing the relevant property records and laws showing they had no jurisdiction over our vineyard. We demanded they rescind their assessment and cease all attempts to claim authority over our land. Their reply came from their attorney, claiming the original development plans included provisions for future expansion of the homeowner association's territory. They maintained we were legally obligated to pay the fees and comply with their regulations. This is absolutely ridiculous, I told Angela. They can't just decide to expand their homeowner association onto other people's private property without their consent. Exactly. And I found something else interesting. Guess who owns that development company that bought the foreclosed property? Karen Matthews' husband. Things escalated quickly after that. The homeowner association filed a lien against our property and initiated foreclosure proceedings. They also started sending people to photograph our vineyard and document supposed violations of their regulations. One day I caught 2 homeowner association board members actually trespassing on our property, measuring the distance between our grapevines and taking pictures. I confronted them immediately. You are trespassing on private property. Leave now or I'm calling the sheriff. We have every right to be here, one of them sneered. This property is under homeowner association jurisdiction and we're documenting violations. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Final warning, leave now or face the consequences. They finally left, but not before one of them said, "You people better wise up and fall in line or you'll regret it." I showed the video to Angela, who advised me to file a police report for criminal trespassing. She also helped me prepare a civil lawsuit against the homeowner association for harassment, attempted fraud, and abusive process. We need to hit them hard, she said, not just to protect your property, but to stop them from trying this with anyone else. The homeowner association's harassment campaign continued while the legal proceedings dragged on. They sent weekly violation notices for everything from excessive agricultural activity to unauthorized commercial operations. They even tried to fine us for the height of our grapevines. Their board members would drive by slowly several times a day, taking pictures and videos. They called county authorities to report bogus zoning violations. They even tried to interfere with our wine distribution by telling local stores our operation was illegal. But we had truth and documentation on our side. Angela built an airtight case showing our property was never part of Pine Creek Estates or its homeowner association. We had clear title and continuous ownership since 1962. The homeowner association had no legal authority to expand beyond its original boundaries. They had engaged in a pattern of fraudulent attempts to seize neighboring properties. Their actions constituted harassment and abuse of process. The case finally went to court in January 2023. The homeowner association's attorney tried to argue that their CC&Rs allowed for expansion of their territory, but the judge wasn't buying it. "Counselor," the judge said, "are you seriously arguing that a private homeowner association has the authority to unilaterally claim jurisdiction over neighboring properties without the owner's consent or any legal process? Your Honor, the development plans clearly show." The development plans for Pine Creek Estates have no bearing on properties that were never part of that development. This appears to be a blatant attempt at a land grab through fraudulent means. The homeowner association board members looked increasingly uncomfortable as evidence of their scheme was presented. Angela methodically laid out how they had targeted multiple properties using fraudulent homeowner association claims to try to seize land for development. When Karen Matthews took the stand, she tried to maintain her arrogant attitude, but Angela's cross-examination destroyed her credibility. "Mrs. Matthews, can you explain why the property your homeowner association seized through foreclosure was sold to a development company owned by your husband?" That's just a coincidence." "A coincidence that netted you and your husband over $200,000 in profit? I don't see how that's relevant. And isn't it true that you and other board members have financial interests in several other development projects in the area?" I declined to answer that. The judge's ruling was devastating for the homeowner association. He invalidated all their claims against our property and ordered them to remove the fraudulent lien immediately. He also awarded us $150,000 in damages for harassment and abuse of process, ordered a forensic audit of the homeowner association's finances, referred the matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges, required all homeowner association board members to resign, appointed a receiver to oversee the homeowner association's operations, but the best part came during his closing remarks. "This court is appalled by the brazen attempt to essentially steal private property through fraudulent homeowner association claims. The actions of Pine Creek Estates Homeowner Association and its board members represent a gross abuse of power and a violation of property rights. This stops here." The aftermath was satisfying to watch. Karen Matthews and several other board members were forced to resign in disgrace. The district attorney opened a criminal investigation into their actions. The development company owned by Matthews' husband was also investigated for fraud. The forensic audit revealed they had been planning to seize several other properties through the same scheme. They had even drafted marketing materials for future housing developments on land they didn't own, including our Vineyard. Other homeowner associations in the area quickly moved to distance themselves from Pine Creek Estates. The local paper ran a series of articles exposing their fraudulent practices. Karen Matthews and her husband eventually moved away after their reputation in the community was destroyed. As for our vineyard, it's still going strong. We even had a record harvest that year. Sometimes when I'm out working among the vines my grandfather planted 60 years ago, I think about how close we came to losing it all to some greedy homeowner association board's illegal scheme. But mostly I think about how satisfying it was to see justice prevail. The homeowner association tried to take what wasn't theirs, but they learned the hard way. You don't mess with a family's heritage. My dad summed it up best. "Your grandfather would be proud. He came to this country with nothing, built something beautiful, and we protected it. That's what family is all about." We still get together every harvest season, 3 generations working side by side just like always. The grapes are sweeter knowing we fought for them and won. And every time I see a Pine Creek Estates sign, I raise a glass of our wine and smile, knowing justice was served. The former homeowner association properties have new management now, with strict oversight to prevent future abuses. Several other local homeowner associations have reformed their practices after seeing what happened. Sometimes standing up to bullies doesn't just protect yourself, it helps prevent others from becoming victims too. As for Karen Matthews and her cronies, last I heard they were facing multiple civil lawsuits from other property owners they had targeted. The criminal investigation is ongoing, but our vineyard is safe. Our family legacy secure, and the grapes still grow just as sweet as they always have. You know what they say, you can't fight City Hall, but you sure can fight a corrupt homeowner association. And sometimes, justice tastes better than the finest wine. The next one is a petty revenge story. Back in ye olde college days, I was a 20-ish-year-old student in the science department. Lab practicals were huge and a big chunk of our grades. Our professor was kind enough to set up a mock practical with specimens like we'd be tested on and mock questions for practice in another lab. We'd show up at 6 p.m. and a few would be there until 6 a.m. Those of us that didn't really need much studying would help out ones that struggled with the material. The issue was, we were college students. Snack machines in the basement were on the 3rd floor. No biggie. A couple of us who didn't need to study would collect change, hike down, get 10 or 12 or 20 drinks, and hike back up. Put the drinks on the counter, everyone wanders over to grab theirs when they reach a stopping point, and we're short a Dr. Pepper. We had the money, we knew we got everything on our list, no Dr. Pepper. We made a second run a few hours later, again, mystery Dr. Pepper missing. Oh, screw that. Third and final run a few hours later. I paid for an extra Dr. Pepper, and we stopped by the 2nd floor labs. They had a vortexer, a little countertop machine that you put test tubes on and it shakes them around and mixes them fast. We put the bottom of the Dr. Pepper on that thing and watched it go voom. Bottom of the can was nearly bubbled out at that point. That's a really shaken up can with extra shaken. Brought them upstairs, handed out the Dr. Peppers specifically and sneakily to the people that got them, leaving bait pepper out. Freshman girl picks it up from the drinks, walks off, opens it. It was lovely. On her face, up her nose, in her hair, you've all seen opening a can of pop go badly, and this was a bit worse than your worst. She was furious. We were laughing our butts off. I don't remember who cleaned up the mess, but if it was us, it was worth it. She got well sprayed. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A few years back when I was in high school, I lived in a small country town as a very flamboyant, obviously queer teenage boy without even needing to say anything. Needless to say, I was definitely the most popular kid in school, and everyone was totally supportive. Even the staff at the school wasn't the biggest fan of me, unfortunately, even though I was a not-so-straight-A student who never caused any trouble. Luckily, being raised on a very literal farm, my family was, and continues to be, really supportive. They knew how interested I am in fashion, and my parents surprised me on my birthday with this pair of heeled Doc Marten Chelsea boots I had been saving up for. Obviously, I was ecstatic and wore them constantly both in and out of school for about a week before I was dress-coded for them. Unfortunately, this was not my first time being dress-coded because of my tendency to wear more feminine clothing, so I had developed the habit of carrying the dress code pamphlet on me in my bag to prove my innocence because I really was never breaking any rules, they just happened to not like what I was wearing. I pointed out that there was nothing about boots or heels, and my teacher just sort of scoffed at me and told me to go to the front office. Apparently they had updated it, and if I had read the newsletter that morning, I would have known that. I went up to the front office, and true to what she had said, they had added a rule to the effect of work boots were allowed but no fashion boots. Unfortunately, it was very obviously targeted because no one, male or female, was wearing anything like that except for me. My parents knew that too when I got home and told them about it. They were furious for me. My dad took me out the very next day after school to a boot store and quite literally bought me a $300 pair of women's black work boots that were completed with even some sparkly rhinestones on them. Quite frankly, these boots made me look more queer than the first pair ever did, and I loved them. I wore these proudly with a black sparkly hat I already owned to school the next day and didn't even make to second period before I was called to the front office for violating dress code. The assistant principal told me these were obviously violating dress code, and I insisted that these were work boots, and practically every other kid wore cowboy boots to school every single day, so there couldn't possibly be a problem with mine. She wouldn't budge, and neither would I, so my parents were called, and it was escalated to the principal. Luckily, we expected this and were prepared. My dad showed up in all of his fresh-off-the-farm dirt-covered glory to my principal office. The conversation went to the effect of her sitting there telling my father, "Those are very obviously for fashion and are violating dress code." And my father would respond something to the effect of, "How do you know what my kid chooses to wear to work in? Since when is wearing boots breaking dress code? Look at everyone else." And this went back and forth for quite frankly an embarrassing amount of the time, but by the end, I was allowed to wear my boots. Much to the annoyance of my old high school's staff, I wore those damn black sparkly boots practically every day for the rest of my high school experience, and then 3 years later, when I was long gone in college, my little sister, an open and proud lesbian by the way, entered high school. We just happened to have the same shoe size, and I didn't mind loaning her the boots. She is a junior now, and continuing my legacy of terrorizing the homophobic teachers and staff by wearing those same shoes to school, which held up amazing by the way, to this day. The next one is an entitled people story. I used to think some entitled passenger stories were maybe a bit dramatized, but I witnessed my first full-on entitled passenger recently. I was on a domestic short-haul flight. It's only about 90 minutes. There are 2 rows in the middle with extra legroom because they are the emergency exit rows, and these seats have a surcharge because of it. The flight itself was about 180 pounds, and the surcharge for the legroom seats was an extra 49.99 pounds. I booked the standard row just behind, and the legroom seats were occupied by 3 middle-aged women about my age. This was 7:30 a.m., and they were whooping and screeching like drunks on a hen night. Then a couple of men turned up, looked a bit puzzled, and then very politely said they thought the ladies were in the wrong seats. "Oh no," they screeched. "It's the first day of our holiday and we just wanted to enjoy ourselves." "Yes, but you're in our seats, so please can you move?" It turned out that only the one in the middle seat had booked the legroom seat, and her friends had taken the other 2 instead of their cheaper ones. Middle seat screecher tried, "I'd be lonely without my friends here, we want to sit together and, it's only a short flight, you'll be fine in our seats instead." Neither man backed down, and eventually the steward intervened and made the 2 friends move to their correct seats. So then the safety announcement came on, and on inspection, the middle seat screecher was told all her bags had to go into the overhead locker. It was a condition of sitting in the emergency exit row. She then started idioting about that. "That's an expensive bag. Someone will try and steal it. I need it here. I have things I might need during the flight." Senior attendant then came and told her very firmly that she either stowed her bag or she had to move to a standard seat, and as the plane was full, that meant disembarkation. So she finally stowed it. Then the refreshments came round and she asked for a gin and tonic. This was 8 a.m., but it's my holiday, I deserve a drink. Sorry, it was a condition of sitting in the emergency exit row that you couldn't drink alcohol in case it impaired you when opening the emergency door. That's effing stupid. We're not gonna crash. It's just one drink. This guy can open the door if he needs to. Senior attendant came back and gave her a talking to along the lines that if she continued to disrupt the flight, then they would put her on a banned passenger list and she wouldn't be allowed to book with the company again. She spent the rest of the journey grumbling about how her holiday had been ruined and trekking up and down the aisle to go screech with her friends further back. Honestly, if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. How do these people not feel embarrassed about making themselves look a total fool in public? Or think they are entitled to take someone's seat knowing that it cost a lot more than they'd paid? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.